Have you ever found yourself asking the question, are you even listening to me? Well, you're not alone. There's a difference between hearing and actually listening. Hearing is the process where sound waves strike the eardrum and cause vibrations that are transmitted to the brain. Hearing is a biological response that happens at sound. But listening is the process where the brain reconstructs electrochemical impulses generated by hearing. Thus, listening moves beyond hearing and onto understanding. It's more than just a biological response, but rather actively engaging your brain to understand the material that's being sent. And listening is a skill that we all have and use, but it's one that we develop the least throughout our life. And learning to listen can greatly impact our lives. And throughout this speech, we're just going to cover two topics on the value of listening, as well as address some of the most common faulty listening habits. So there's great value in learning to listen effectively. The first is that you're more likely to advance in professional settings. Those that are good listeners are more likely to get hired from the beginning, but they're also more likely to be promoted. They're also judged as appealing and trustworthy. They're not easily fooled by false information. And also, when we listen to advice from our boss or coworkers, it makes you look better. Another one is it enhances our leadership capabilities. Those that are effective listeners have greater influence as well as stronger relationships. Oftentimes, people think that speaking is what gains influence, but rather it's your listening that gains influence. And another value is that it makes you a better friend and romantic partner. Those that are better at listening are considered more supportive, but they're also considered more attractive as well. So what are some of those faulty listening habits that we have that keep us from being an effective listener? The first is that we pretend to listen. This is also known as pseudo-listening. Pseudo-listening is the process of imitating actually listening. Stephen Curry, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, found that most people only pretend to listen while they rehearse what they're going to say in their head. Another faulty habit we have is selective listening. And this is the process of tuning in and out of the conversation. And because of that tuning in and out process, the receiver will only address parts of the conversation that interested them rather than the whole thing. And selective listening can lead to misunderstanding, confusion, hurt feelings. And selective listening is something that we all do from time to time, but the problem is when we stay in that selective listening place, it enables our ability to be a truly effective listener. Another faulty habit we have is we defend ourselves. And this is also known as defensive listening. And in defensive listening, the receiver often feels as though they're being attacked, even if they're not. And this results in the receiver listening only to defend themselves rather than to understand the message being sent. Now, defensive listening is often rooted in guilt or insecurity rather than the truth and understanding of what's being said to them. And one of the last faulty habits that we struggle with is we're self-centered. We listen from a self-centered point of view. A conversational narcissist is someone who is constantly talking about themselves, their interests, or constantly turning the conversation back to them. And when the conversation is always pointed back on yourself, you're impairing your ability to actively and fully effectively listen to what other people are saying. A conversational narcissist will discourage the give and take of a mutually beneficial or mutually satisfying conversation. And they interpret or assume that their ideas or thoughts are better or somehow more important. So to recap, listening moves beyond hearing and engages understanding. And I like the word engages because it requires one to be intentional and fully present in the conversation. Rather than something that just happens by sound waves, it is something that we're actively participating in. And there's great value in this participation, such as job advancement or being a better partner. But also, we're instilled with these faulty habits that impair our ability to effectively listen, such as selective listening or defensive listening. But there's good news. It's never too late to improve our listening skills. Starting today, we can be mindful of how much we actually listen versus how much we actually hear. And even more important, we can measure how much we listen versus how much we speak. And after we take this self-inventory, you can start the process of becoming a more effective listener.